Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment that, building off what Senator Lee said, Section 1507 of our federal code makes it a crime to picket and go to homes of Supreme Court officials or judges and in a way to keep them from being intimidated and harassed. I think all of us on this committee, it's 23892 is the amendment, SIL 23892. Okay. So I remember very vividly that, protesters came to my house, somebody broke a window. Not a pleasant experience. Appreciate the Capitol Hill Police helping me out there. A lot of us probably had people come to our homes during the Kavanaugh and other events. That's sort of uncomfortable. I know we got some members here with small children. Got to be sort of a better way. So Section 1507 is on the books. And as Senator Lee said, very organized effort to intimidate justices, some with small children. Basically, nothing happened to anybody. You can be sympathetic to their cause, but we should also enforce the law no matter how we feel about the cause. No matter how I feel about what you're doing, I don't want anybody to go to your house and break your window. No matter how I feel about your legislative agenda, I don't want anybody to threaten you and your family. That's just not good for the country. So this amendment will allow the Supreme Court police, who have limited authority, to investigate violations of Section 1507. The Justice Department, for some odd reason, basically gave everybody a pass, and I can only imagine how uncomfortable it was for the justices, some with small children, having to endure this. So the Supreme Court has a police force designed to protect them and the grounds, and it does have limited jurisdiction, but the point is that I'm glad the Supreme Court has its own police force. Seems like to me they're going to need them now more than ever. So I'd like to have an amendment to amend to allow the Supreme Court police to investigate violations of Section 1507, a statute designed to protect the court and their homes.
Before recognizing other members, I'm advised by my staff that this amendment would add responsibilities to the Supreme Court police, which I believe you said, tasking them with investigating violations of the federal prohibition on picketing or parading with the intent of interfering with the administration of justice or influence a judge in the administration of their duties. Judicial security has consistently been bipartisan. As I mentioned earlier, we passed legislation to protect the federal judiciary and their families, including justices of the Supreme Court. Each year, the Supreme Court is visited by an estimated 500,000 visitors from around the world. The Supreme Court police are responsible for protecting the visitors as well as the justices and their staff. Expanding their responsibilities to investigate picketing and protesting may stretch their resources beyond their current assignment. I don't know how much it will cost or who will be given the assignment, but it currently is the responsibility of the Department of Justice, the FBI, and local law enforcement to do that. To move that responsibility to the Supreme Court police raises questions about their capability and resources. We can all agree judicial security is of the utmost importance, but the bill today is about another issue completely different. It is about protecting the reputation of the Supreme Court by ensuring that justices create an enforceable code of conduct. If my Republican colleagues will join in my concern about protecting the justices, it would be refreshing if they would join Democrats in supporting the appropriations legislation that funds Supreme Court security. The fiscal year 2023 omnibus bill contained millions of dollars in such funding. Unfortunately, 7 Republican members of this committee voted against this bill to provide that funding to protect the Supreme Court. I urge my colleagues to oppose this non-germane amendment. Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I would imagine that some of the members of this committee who voted against the appropriations bill probably didn't do it for that reason. That's what happens when you, at the end of the year, you throw everything in a big pot and you can't have a normal process. So it puts a lot of our members in a bad spot. And I'm hoping we'll go to Appropriations Committee here in a minute and try to clean up that mess. But here's what I'm saying. The system failed. The system designed to protect justices at their homes failed. The Department of Justice failed. The people in charge of enforcing the law under 1507, in my view, failed. I'm not taking power away from them. I'm trying to give power to the police who protect the Supreme Court to investigate intimidation of the court in their homes. I regret I'm having to do this. I never thought I'd have to do this. But if you don't see the failure, then you're blind. The people who came to picket these justices had a desire to intimidate them, make their life miserable, and we have laws on the book preventing that. Nobody's been held accountable. So let's allow the police department, who has direct authority over the protection of the Supreme Court, the power to investigate. And if they need more money to hire investigators, I am sure that we can find a way to do that. So the idea that this giving the power to investigate intimidation of justices in their homes somehow makes justices less safe makes no sense. None. And the reason I'm doing this is because the system failed, and we need to change that system.
Anyone else
Mr.
seek
Chairman,
recognition?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Feinstein and then Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to vote no. The amendment, I believe, is not germane to the issue of Supreme Court ethics addressed in this bill. It would give the Supreme Court police the authority to investigate a federal crime that is already under the jurisdiction of the United States Department of Justice, which could create jurisdictional concerns. The Justice Department and the FBI already have responsibility for investigating these crimes.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar?
Mr. Chairman, I have some sympathy for this issue and for the fact that we are not doing enough when it comes to security. I'm pleased about the bills that we have passed. I believe that we need to do more. I think many people in this room, as noted, have had some pretty bad experiences with security. I'm going to vote no simply because it is not what we're focused on today, which is the ethics of these justices and trying to put some ethical rules in place that I wish very much the court could more clearly do themselves with an enforcement mechanism. I think we all know this isn't the first time Congress has stepped in to make sure that our government officials behave ethically, but I am happy to work with my colleagues in the future on this issue because I believe we have neglected our own security as well as others, and no one does anything about it when they have their own security, and then for those of us that don't, we just get stuck with it.
Thank you. Senator Welch, do you seek recognition on this amendment?
I do. I had hoped to just make a comment about the bill, but I'll do it in the context of this amendment if that is okay, and I'll be brief. I listened very carefully to some of the very important concerns that my colleagues on the Republican side raised about the independence of the judiciary, the separation of powers, the politicization. Those are all things that are of great concern to me. The rule of law really matters. But I kind of took a poll from Vermonters. I live on a dirt road and checked with some of my neighbors, and I asked a simple question. Do you think that a justice should be required, if they receive private airplane travel in yacht vacations, be required to disclose it? And they looked at me like that was the weirdest question they'd ever heard. And they didn't answer it. They asked me a question. They said, they can do that? Seriously? And I didn't have an answer for that. So the heart of the bill here is about it disclosing something that the vast majority of the people we represent, all of us, think shouldn't be done in the first place. So disclosure is the bare minimum. And that has to apply to anybody who's a judge, appointed by Clinton, appointed by Trump, appointed by Biden. Everybody should have that obligation. So this is like the minimum, and it has, in my view, very important implications for trying to restore credibility to a Supreme Court that's not held in high regard right now. And it's been a big disappointment to me to see the failure of the Chief Justice to not act and essentially put this in the court of this Senate Judiciary Committee. I yield back.
So the questions on the adoption of the
Mr. Chairman, if I
Senator
may
Graham?
respond. Senator Welch, in I think it was March, April of this year, the Supreme Court dealt with this issue. They now require disclosures of trips on private planes, boats, et cetera. They've already done this.